Hey everybody, welcome to In the Red Zone. Sean Brown, Michael Johnson here, and it is time for Week 2 college football picks. But before we get started on that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Hit that like button, and always leave a comment. And speaking of comments, thank you everybody for the well wishes to get better, because I had COVID last time we did our show Week 1. That was, I don't know how I made it through that.
Sounded like Coach O.
Oh, I was in bad shape. If you didn't notice, we had to stop shooting several times, so I could just lay down and catch my breath, and then we'd get back at it. So that was a tough one.
Yeah, we had to cut that one short. But.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get started, and we'll talk about Week 1 a little bit. A couple little changes this year with picks, because in the past we've picked between 15 and 20 games.
Yeah,
it's a lot of games, and the truth is we just can't research all of them the way we need to.
Yeah.
And we picked games. We did it with Week 0 and Week 1, and some of these games are just not competitive. They're not worth talking about or picking, in my opinion.
Yeah. So
kind of a new thing for this year. We're not going to pick any of these, what I call non-competitive games, or any games with a spread over 30. I think that's a good
unless it's like,
there could be exceptions, but that's kind of going to be the rule kind of going forward. So
I would say we maybe always pick OU and Ohio State just because those are our teams, but
okay. Well, we're not this week. Just go ahead and give you that one. They're not on the list, but
OU covers.
Yeah, Ohio State covers. Yeah,
whatever that spread is.
Yeah, I mean they're playing Kent State and Arkansas State.
I doubt a whole lot of people are, unless you're an OU fan out there betting on the game or throwing it in a parlay or whatever. But
so I just think I would like to talk about the more competitive games, the good matchups each week.
Yeah.
I mean, because our shows get to be long, and if we're going to talk about games, let's talk about some of the good matchups, in my opinion. So I know that for some of you fans, it leaves your team out. But what's the point of talking about Alabama playing Mercer? You know, what's the point of that? There's no point in sitting here wasting time talking about that, in my opinion. So that being said, a couple takeaways from Week 1 that you noticed.
There were a couple crazy finishes to games. If you were watching last night, which we're recording on Monday, so last night being Sunday night tonight, or last night Sunday
night.
Tonight's game is Clemson and Georgia Tech.
Yes. It has not played yet as we're shooting, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So last night, crazy finish with the LSU Florida State game, where LSU fails to make a point after attempt. And
now, in all honesty, I didn't see the game. I watched until halftime, and I was so bored I went to bed. So I did not see the end of that game.
And then the other real crazy finish, I went to the OU game, so I was kind of out on the early games.
There was some good ones.
There was one you said was just one of the craziest games.
NC State ECU was ridiculous. I mean, that game was, ECU just looked like the better team, and all this hype for NC State coming into the season.
Yeah. Best
team in program history, the best linebacking core and all this stuff. And I picked ECU. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was the one we had different on our picks.
Yeah.
And ECU comes down, gets a touchdown to should have tied the game, and then their kicker misses an extra point.
Yeah.
Somehow ECU gets the ball back and has a chance for a field goal to win the game and misses a field goal. So, I mean, NC State squeaks out with a win, but boy, being ranked, I think at the time 13 or something like that, they're not a top 20 team. They're not going to compete with Clemson for the ACC. I didn't see it. Leary, their quarterback, he's not real solid. He started the game pretty good, but I mean, if you're talking about the best team in program history, they should have took care of ECU. I mean,
I know we're not picking them this week, but what'd you see from Ohio State, since they're kind of in the talk for the top 3 teams?
I honestly, even losing at halftime, I never felt like Ohio State was going to lose the game. I just felt like they were going to, at the end, win it. Now, I was mad because I picked them to cover, and when we do these picks, I want them to cover.
Yeah.
And I knew flat out, probably after the first quarter, they're not covering this spread, and that I was mad the whole time because of that. I think I was very impressed with their defense. It's much better than I expected, especially the secondary, and I've harped on that about this year.
Yeah.
The offense definitely underperformed, but it's also this. You get this with Ohio State in most years. Last year they struggled with Oregon in the beginning of the season, and they kind of take a few games, hit their stride, and so Smith and Jigma gets hurt. I mean, that changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
Stroud wasn't on with a lot of his passes. He was missing Harrison. Harrison had a few he dropped. I mean, the offense is not clicking yet. They really need to get to work on their chemistry. But that defense, especially that front defensive line, wow. I mean, I have a much better feeling about Ohio State possibly playing or winning a national championship this year than I did prior to the game.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has a great defense. I mean, Notre Dame, I think, is really good. They just are lacking on offense.
Yeah.
They really are. But that was my takeaways from that.
Yeah. So, again, we're not going to pick the OU game playing Kent State, but things I saw from them, I didn't see a championship caliber team yet. I'll say yet. They could grow into it. I saw a really good player from each position group, but I didn't see the national championship caliber teams are the ones that have 2, 3, 4 guys along the defensive line that are just crazy good, elite level. Reggie Grimes was a guy that stood out to me, and apparently his grandma was there who just got diagnosed with cancer. So you love just seeing those stories of guys just coming out and playing so hard for a family member or friend that is kind of going through something like that. But Dylan Gabriel, I felt like he looked pretty rusty. Had some times where he held onto the ball. The second quarter was real kind of lackluster. They'd kind of got back on their heels a little bit, but in the third and fourth quarter they put it away and did what a good or great team should do. I'm not saying that they're consistently great yet because I want to see them do this week in, week out.
Yeah.
But last year they struggled to put Tulane away, and so that was a good change of pace to see.
Yeah.
Again, a team that is supposed to put these teams away, and they're actually doing that. So, again, not saying they're championship caliber. That's not what I saw out of them, but I do think they could grow into that, maybe, hopefully, by the end of the season. We'll just have to see if they continue to develop.
One takeaway from that game for me, the defense flying to the football, we expected that. They were physical, we expected that. What I was a little bit surprised was that UTEP able to put, even though it didn't relate to points, they were able to move the ball. Sometimes at will. And I was a little surprised by that. I didn't think they'd be able to do that.
Their starting quarterback was pretty good. I mean, he had a pretty decent, accurate arm. And then they had a wide receiver. I'm blanking on his name, but I think he went for like 78 yards or something. His longest was a 15-yard catch. I mean, he looked pretty impressive. And a lot of those teams will have a couple of really good players. They just don't have it all the way down the roster like an Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia would. And that makes all the difference pretty much.
And let's talk about Georgia. I mean, about reloading. They lost all that to the NFL. They didn't lose a step. To me, they look better than last year. I didn't think that was even possible.
Yeah.
To me, I will say, I don't really care about number 4 and all that, but right now, Georgia's number 1 in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think, and I said this when Alabama was defending national champion, even though they didn't maybe look as good at the time, we argued it, rightfully so at the time. When you're the defending national champion, you're number 1 until somebody beats you.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, Georgia should be number 1 until somebody beats them. Now, honestly, after watching the game, Alabama didn't do anything that makes me think they're not good. But just because of Ohio State's win over Notre Dame, I would put Ohio State at 2 and Alabama at 3 for now. There's plenty of games to be played for all that to shake up. But for right now, I think you have Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama as my 1, 2, and 3. 4 just kind of up in the air. We had Utah lose. We had... Clemson still hasn't played. They're 4. They play tonight. If the game's already over if you're watching this video, but they haven't played yet. So I don't know about 4. It can be kind of up in the air, right now. But I definitely think Georgia is a dominant number 1 team right now with how they handled Oregon.
Only thing I'll say there is, in 2019 you had LSU and arguably one of the best college football team to play on a field in history, and I did say arguably, so don't kill me in the comments. But then the next year, 2020, granted you did have COVID, you had all that, were we going to play in the next week?
Yeah.
So don't know if that kind of had something to do with it, but we have seen teams that just kind of come out of nowhere and they have a generational type. I mean, look at Florida State with Jameis Winston. You know, they play for the national championship, and then just a couple of years later, they're not very good. So that happens from time to time. I wouldn't go so far as to say you're automatically number one that next year. It depends on recruiting factors into that, whether or not you have coaches that leave and go somewhere else. Because a lot of those national championship teams, they do get their assistant coaches poached. I mean, it's almost a given. You know, somebody's going to be gone from that coaching staff the next year. So a lot of things happen to those teams. The only reason why I would say not to say it's an automatic for that team. So.
Yeah, I guess I can see it. The only other thing
but Georgia's good. I'm not saying that they're not great, because they
were.
And maybe we overvalued Oregon a little bit.
Maybe, yeah.
But
Georgia was impressive. That's all I'll say there.
Yeah.
Last game I want to talk about before we get to picks, because it was just an absolutely insane, ridiculous game. North Carolina, App State. That game was ridiculous. That one ended up pushing. App State was, North Carolina was a 2-point favorite. Ended up 63-61, but over 40 points scored in the fourth quarter.
Man.
App State's down 20, 21 points and has to come back. And then App State scores, and instead of kicking to tie it, they go for the 2-point conversion. And the guy's wide open. He's wide open, but he starts backtracking, stumbles over his feet. So then they're down by 1. They have to kick an onside kick, and North Carolina guy just comes up and grabs it and goes down the field, scores a touchdown. And it's like 30 seconds to go, and App State gets the ball. And like 3 plays, they're in the end zone.
Yeah.
And then they go for 2 again. They don't get it, and it ends up being a 2-point win for North Carolina. I'm sitting there the whole time. I had it marked, covered. We've got it. We're good.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that played out in the end. But I said it after week 0. I'll continue to say it. North Carolina's defense is one of the worst that I've ever seen in college football.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a bloopers video trying to watch them play defense. Yeah. It is bad. So,
So, last thing I'll mention before we start our picks, hats off to Kansas for getting a 56-10 win over Tennessee Tech. I know it's Tennessee Tech, but I think they're...
They play West Virginia this week. They'll be back down to earth.
Yeah, but they scored 21 in the first quarter, 14 in the second, and then 14 in the fourth. Devin Leal was their leading rusher with 108 yards on 4 carries and 2 touchdowns, 27 yards per carry. So hats off to them for a team that couldn't buy a win for years. I mean, they had 3 wins in maybe as many seasons, and I know they're beating Texas, and we kind of bash on Texas for that a little bit, but that's pretty cool to see.
One more I got to bring up. We can't do this video without talking about the backyard brawl, the Pitt West Virginia.
Oh yeah.
That game was incredible.
Yeah.
Listen, my takeaway from that,
great. It was like a playoff game. It felt like a playoff game.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So my takeaway from that, from the Keaton Slovis versus JT Daniels. JT Daniels to me was the better quarterback.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty obvious.
Great.
I think, in my opinion, West Virginia was the better team almost the entire game. Now they lost. I get that. But what lost them that game, people talked about, was that a catch at the end of the game. I don't really care. That didn't decide the game to me. That pass off Ford Wheaton's hands, bloop, right in the air and turns into a pick 6.
Yeah.
That was the game.
Yeah.
You got to catch that.
Right.
You're one of the top receivers in the country. You got to catch that ball.
Yeah.
I mean, you cost your team the game there.
It literally was in a breadbasket, and it looked like the tip drill.
Tip drill, yeah. Yeah, but it was just unfortunate that happened to West Virginia. Hats off to Pitt. I just don't think Pitt is they're not going to contend with Clemson for the ACC. I think they're missing some pieces, and it was obvious in that game. So,
I mean, Keaton Slovis could keep them in some ball games, though.
He could, but I think that we talked about it before the game, about Pitt's secondary. They're just as bad as last year.
Yeah.
They're not stopping anybody. Any team that can throw the ball is going to throw all over Pitt.
Yeah.
And Pitt and Keaton Slovis is going to have a hard time keeping up in every game. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready for week 2?
I'm ready for week 2.
All right. 12 games we're going to pick. I think it's 12. I didn't count them. I think it was 12. Let's just start out with the biggest one, because it is big noon kickoff on Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern Time. Alabama is a 20-point favorite against Texas. Quick observations here. bottom line, I'm taking Alabama to cover. Here's my observations of the two teams. I didn't watch the whole game. I watched highlights. I saw some of the games. Alabama's Alabama. They look like they haven't lost a stride since last year.
Yeah.
They are on it. They absolutely just manhandled Utah State.
Yeah.
I mean, and I thought Utah State would at least score 10 points, or it was ugly. And then on the flip side of that, when I watched Texas, I mean, Quinn Ewers' second pass was an interception. His 2 touchdown passes, one was on a busted coverage, and there was nobody within 20 yards of his wide receiver. I mean, anybody could have hit that pass. And then the second touchdown was just a flip out in the flats, and the guy took it up the sideline. They just weren't impressive passes to me. He looked like he had happy feet, looked like he was like rushing. I mean, the way he was throwing some of those passes, just hurrying to get rid of them, it just looked like the game was too fast for him. And I think he is in for a rude awakening Saturday against Alabama, against that defense. Yeah. I mean, I just don't think. Bijan Robinson, he only carried it 10 times for 71 yards. That's a 7 average. I get it. 1 touchdown. Alabama had in their game 559 yards of total offense. Texas managed 383 yards of offense against UL Monroe. 3 of Texas's touchdowns, one came on a punt block, 1 on a punt return, and another on a pick 6. So it's not like the Texas offense was overwhelmingly exciting in this game. I mean, the defense did some things that they're supposed to do against UL Monroe. Bottom line, I think Alabama is 31, 32 points better than Texas in this game.
Yeah, it could get out of hand pretty quick. Quinn Ewers just, man, there was one throw that he fitted in a pretty tight window, but he had another guy running down pretty much down the numbers, just wide open that he just missed. Mm-hmm. He looked like he was staring down the receiver, but he kind of stepped up and had kind of that. It's almost a baseball throw, and it's what Spencer Rattler would do, when he would kind of step up into the pocket when the pocket's collapsing. I'm telling you now, Dallas Turner and Will Anderson are going to have field days against the offensive line for Texas. Yeah. I mean, and Quinn Ewers is not going to have that long to throw the ball, so they're going to have to work in something where quick slants. Screen passes, something like, I don't know, end arounds, just that short game is going to have to be on. And, I did see, some journalists for Texas saying that those were the passes he was kind of connecting on. It was the deep ball that he was struggling with. So, I don't know if they can work the ball down the field and keep that defensive line at bay. That's pretty much the only way they're going to be able to handle that.
I have a feeling they're going to hold Bijan Robinson to under 30 yards rushing, and if he can't run the ball, Texas has no offense. Yeah. Like, they're not going to be able to throw the ball all night against Alabama. Yeah. So you got Texas or you got Alabama. Right?
I'm taking Alabama just because that's three touchdown difference. Yeah. I mean, I just don't see Texas there yet. I just don't.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because after beating UL Monroe, a whole bunch of Texas fans jumped on message boards saying, we want Alabama. Well, you're about to get Alabama.
You're about to get them.
Get the crime scene tape out.
You wanted Caleb Williams last year, and you got him. He ended up
you're about to see a murder on national television in front of millions of people. So get the crime scene tape out. So Okay, next game, South Carolina is at Arkansas. Arkansas is an 8-point favorite. Arkansas coming off the big win against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense, much, much better than I expected them to play. They played pretty good with Arkansas. Arkansas's offense kind of struggled at times, but I think the most telling part of this was how Arkansas's defense struggled with a Cincinnati offense that literally at times just looked inept. Their quarterback, Bryant, couldn't hit anybody wide open, overthrowing guys who were should have been touchdowns. They looked really bad, and they're trying to replace Desmond Ridder, and they don't have a quarterback. Yeah. But that being said, South Carolina still gave up 438 yards total offense to Cincinnati. That, to me, is a red flag going forward. Arkansas was a 6-point favorite in that game. They covered. They won by 7. So in this game, they're an 8-point favorite. Jefferson had a good game, 223 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Raheem Sanders, running back, 20 carries for 117 yards. South Carolina, they won 34 something.
It's 35-14.
35-14. But 2 of those touchdowns that they scored were blocked punts that they recovered for a touchdown. So Rattler struggled as well. You got his stats, but
yeah, Rattler was 23 of 37, 227 yards through the air. That's an average of 6.1. One touchdown, 2 interceptions, and he had the lowest QBR of all SEC quarterbacks with 28.6. If you know anything about QBR, that's not very good.
Yeah.
Knowing that the upper echelon guys, Stetson Bennett, Bryce Young, they're in the 90s. So if that tells you anything about where Spencer Rattler was, he was on the ground. He was 4 carries for 12 yards. So that tells me he was sacked a few times. And
they played Georgia State, correct?
They did play Georgia State, and Georgia State actually managed 200 yards on the ground with only 111 yards passing. And I think Georgia State was one of those teams that was triple option for a long time, and I believe they started to phase that out. I'm not 100% sure on that. I know Georgia Tech was, but I believe Georgia State was as well. And South Carolina's top receiver went 4 receptions for 88 yards. That was Jalen Brooks there. No touchdowns. No sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 51 total. Nothing total tackles. Nothing really jumped out to me on paper on the defensive side of the ball. So I think KJ Jefferson's going to have himself a good day. He's athletic enough. I think South Carolina will struggle, so I'm going to take Arkansas.
I'm there with you. I'm taking Arkansas to cover the 8. I think Cincinnati, people don't want to give them benefit of the doubt because they're in the American Conference, but they're getting ready to go to the Big 12.
Yeah.
And Luke Fickell has that program where they're almost reloading every year as well. Maybe not quite the depth yet, but listen, Cincinnati's every bit as good as the first teamers on any SEC team or Pac-12 or anything. So, the close game with Cincinnati doesn't mean anything. I just think that that's a good Cincinnati team. So I think you're right. I think Cincinnati is light years ahead of South Carolina right now. So, I think Arkansas comes out and wins by 12 or more.
Yeah.
So, okay, next game, Wake Forest is an 8-point favorite against Vanderbilt. Now, here's the thing about Vanderbilt. They went out and blew out Hawaii, and then they turn around and they really struggle with, I'm going to say, I call them Elon. I don't know how they pronounce their name. I think it's Elon, but we'll just call him Elon. But they only beat Elon 42-31. And Vanderbilt gave up 495 yards of total offense to Elon. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah.
Their offense, their defense is not good. Now their quarterback, Mike Wright, he has 10 total touchdowns on the year, 6 throwing, 4 rushing. He's pretty much their offense.
Yeah.
You shut him down, you shut Vanderbilt down.
Yeah.
Wake Forest is an upcoming team. They had a really good year last year. They still have a lot of pieces returning, pieces in place. They're still going to be a good offense.
Yeah.
And because of that, Vanderbilt can't keep up with Wake Forest in this one, so I'll take Wake Forest to cover 8.
Yeah, Vanderbilt is 2-0, but let's kind of pump the brakes a little bit on that because they played Hawaii week 1 and scored 63 points, and Hawaii has since lost to Western Kentucky 49-17.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of fool's gold there. I'm taking Wake Forest. I don't think Vanderbilt is getting out of the gutter of the SEC anytime soon.
No, I agree with you. Okay, next game is App State against Texas A&M. Texas A&M a 17-point favorite. I watched almost all of the North Carolina App State game. I still think App State is one of the best Group of 5 schools in the country. I think they're a tremendous program. I was really heartbroken that they lost that game. I really thought they were going to win. Getting North Carolina to come to Boone, North Carolina, I mean,
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate for them. On the flip side of that, what I got to see of Texas A&M, they won like 31-0. They weren't that impressive against Sam Houston. Now, that game was a delay for a while, but Haynes King, their quarterback, I mean, by halftime, you had Texas A&M fans all over the place wanting him replaced, out of there.
Well, he throws 2 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. He did go through, he was 20 of 31 for 364 yards. Again, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But Anaya Smith, 6 receptions for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
So
Yep.
2 of the 3 go to Anaya Smith.
Yep.
Had himself a good game there.
On the flip side of that, Chase Bryce threw for 361 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. And what was impressive with him was there at the end, they miss a 2-point conversion. They give up the onside kick for a touchdown. They only have 30 seconds left and no touchdown or no timeouts, and they go to the field and score.
Yeah.
Now, they lose the game, and that's heartbreaking, but Bryce showed he's a leader. He can move the ball. This App State offense is for real. And I don't hold a lot against their defense for giving up 61 to North Carolina because that North Carolina offense is still really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a new quarterback and everything, but they've reloaded at quarterback. Bottom line is, my prediction here, I have App State covering 17. I don't have them winning the game, but I think this game ends up being much closer than what people expect. Yeah. I am not sold. I know they had the number 1 recruiting class. I'm not sold on Texas A&M being this SEC West juggernaut who's going to compete for a national championship. I'm not sold on that yet.
And how many of those true freshmen are playing? You've got. I'm just looking down the list here to see if anybody stands out. True freshman wise.
Now the Texas A&M defense did. Now again, this is Sam Houston, but they did only give up 198 yards of total offense against Sam Houston. So they did their job. They did what they're supposed to do on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Levius Overton, he's a true freshman playing in there. They've got Walter Nolan, true freshman. They've got really good guys that were really good recruits coming out of high school on the defensive side. But how quickly can they all get the system 100% in their minds? This is one that I look at the 17 and I'm like, man, I think App State could do it. And do I think that A&M is 15 points better than North Carolina? It's a tough man. This is tough. I want to say that what I saw from Appalachian State against North Carolina was indicative of what they're going to do against Texas A&M. But I think Jimbo Fisher is a good coach. I do.
Mm-hmm. So you're wanting Texas A&M?
I'm going to take Texas A&M.
Okay.
There's
one where we're different.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I don't know. That's one I want to take App State, and I initially did, but I'm going to change here. And normally when I do change, it's not in my favor usually. So
okay.
I'm going to take Texas A&M.
I got App State. Yeah. Okay. Next one, Tennessee 7-point favorite at Pitt. Pitt coming off the backyard brawl. Could there be a letdown? That's one of my notes because you come off the high of these games and you don't always have it the next week.
Well, yeah, the same thing could be said for Tennessee coming out in their first game and just demolishing Ball State. 59-10.
But that wasn't a rivalry game.
I know.
Yeah, it didn't have quite the.
But Tennessee has been down,
sure.
and a lot of those fans are starting to buy the Josh Heupel Kool-Aid,
okay.
and drink it full well.
Okay, so I said earlier I think that West Virginia outplayed Pitt almost the entire game, even though they lost. So Pitt did win. I don't think Pitt is a true contender for the ACC. However. And I've been big on Tennessee the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'll just say it. I want Tennessee to win. I really do. But a couple things here. Offensively, I think these teams are pretty even. Tennessee, you take Hooker away from quarterback, and they don't really have a lot. They just don't. The Tennessee's defensive front is really good. They're going to stop the run. So Keaton Slovis is going to have a good game. Have to have a good game.
Yeah.
He's going to have to throw the ball to beat Pitt. Here's my big red flag. The Tennessee secondary gave up 351 yards passing to Ball State.
Ooh.
That's not good. That is a huge red flag. And Pitt is going to throw the ball all over the place. And if you can't stop Ball State, you're not going to stop Pitt.
Well, and the turnovers that were there too. 4 fumbles, 2 interceptions. You can't do that.
I think Pitt is still riding a high. I think it continues. It's a home game. If they had to go on the road, I'd probably be taking Tennessee.
Yeah.
The fact this game is being played at home for Pitt, I think Pitt covers the 7. I don't know if they win. I think they have a chance. Might be an upset, but I definitely think it's one of those 2-3 point games. I do not think Tennessee can cover 7 points in this.
I'm going to take Tennessee.
Okay.
They did enough. They were able to employ, whatever they wanted to on offense, enough to see what works in that first game. Because I'm telling you guys, we're in that 3-game window where you really don't know, unless, some of these teams are coming back with a lot. But with transfer portal, with NIL, it's just so much different these days. The first 3 games are the hardest games to pick because you just don't know. You just don't know what each team is going to do from week to week.
Well, I also think giving up 351 yards through the air to Ball State also tells me that Tennessee front 4 is not getting pressure on the quarterback. And I'm telling you, Pitt's offensive line is going to be better than Ball State's.
Yeah, let me look at that. Let me look and see what they had as far as fixing to have it here. Were you saying Ball State or Tennessee?
Ball State gained 351 yards through
so
the air.
You're wanting to know how many times they got the Tennessee D-line got home or their linebackers got home. So they had 2 tackles for loss and 0 sacks. So they are not getting to the quarterback.
Right. And if they can't get to the quarterback against Ball State, they're not getting to the quarterback against Pitt.
Now, they did have 7 QB hurries and 5 passes batted down. So,
okay.
And their top 3 tacklers all had 8 tackles, and then 7 and 6. So they do have some guys that are kind of sticking out on defense.
You still like Tennessee, though?
I'm going to stick with Tennessee.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's go to the next one. Washington State against Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a 17-point favorite. Washington State struggled with Idaho. I mean, they beat them 24-17. Wisconsin beat Illinois State 38-0. Wisconsin defense only gave up 57 yards rushing in that game, which is what you expect against an Illinois State. Washington State's quarterback Cameron Ward was 25 of 40, 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wisconsin's running back Braylon Allen, 14 carries, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. So Wisconsin's doing what Wisconsin does. They keep it on the ground. I didn't throw out Graham Mertz's stats there. They weren't that. He didn't throw the ball that much. I don't think they needed to against Illinois State.
16 times.
Yeah, but the truth is, though, Washington State did not look good at all. They struggled, and I just think they're way out of their league playing against a Wisconsin team that's just going to pound. And I bet they could beat Washington State by 21 just keeping the ball on the ground and never throwing it. So I think Wisconsin easily covers 17 at home.
Well, Cameron Ward for Washington State threw...
3 touchdowns.
He threw the ball 40 times, connected on 25 of them for 215 yards, 3 touchdowns. So they did have their leading rusher was 18 carries for 117 yards. So they can run the ball, they can pass the ball, but struggling with Idaho. Idaho is just not. Usually isn't very good. And so I'm going to take Wisconsin.
Okay.
Don't know too much about either team yet, but I just know, historically Wisconsin is usually the better team.
Right. Okay. Iowa State is against Iowa, rivalry game. Iowa, 3.5-point favorite. I mean, Iowa looked atrocious on offense in that game that they played against South Dakota State? Let me look it up. South Dakota State, The Iowa defense looked astounding. They only gave up 33 yards rushing and 87 yards passing in the entire game. So the defense took care of work, but the offense, a field goal and 2 safeties, which actually the offense didn't get the safeties, the defense did. So the offense got 3 points. Honestly, they looked so bad, I wondered if they could even score a touchdown all year long. Here's what I know.
South Dakota State, that's not North Dakota State, who has won their league, over and over and over again.
Right. So I just think I mean, to be honest with you, I know Iowa's defense is so good they're going to limit Iowa State how many points they can put on the board. But Iowa State can still manage 10 to 17 points, and I don't know if Iowa will score.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Iowa is the favorite here. In the FBI predictor, it's 55% in favor of Iowa State. I'm going with Iowa State. I mean, Iowa State will be upset. I mean, I don't think that Iowa should be the favorite here.
Okay, so real quick, I'm just going to look at the history of the two and just see, because some of these.
And by the way, Iowa State against Southeast Missouri State, they won 42-10. Quarterback Hunter Deckers, who I guess would be a first-year quarterback for Iowa State, 293 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception.
So Iowa has actually won the last 6 games in a row. And going back to 2010, they are 8-3. So that's probably why a lot of the bettors are going towards Iowa, because historically it's a very dominated Iowa-dominated rivalry here.
Well, you know what? Michigan beat Ohio State last year, so I think Iowa State beats Iowa this year. I just don't see it. I don't see Iowa.
But then again,
can't do anything on offense.
You could probably go back to last year, us talking about Iowa State, and we're saying the same exact things.
Yeah.
Like, Iowa just can't score. They can't score. They can't score. Their offense is no good, and then they end up, they won last year's game, 27-17. So. Really surprised us.
But last year, Iowa State also lost their first game to Northern Iowa, so we weren't 100% sold on Iowa State because of that. So I'm sticking with Iowa State this year.
Yeah, I'm going to take Iowa State. I think they bucked the trend this year.
Okay.
And I'm going to take them. 3.5's not that much, so give me them to win.
Next one, Kentucky heads down to Florida. Florida, 4.5-point favorite. Kentucky quarterback Will Lewis was 21 of 32, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson, who's been all over the highlights and ESPN and everything because of beating Utah. But truthfully, though, he really didn't do much. I mean, if you look at his stats, he didn't do a whole lot. 17 of 24, 168 yards. Kentucky only was able to rush for 50 yards against Miami of Ohio. That's not good.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Napier at Florida has that team playing like I didn't think they'd be playing first game of the year.
Yeah.
I didn't think they would beat Utah. They came out and their defense played pretty good. Offense did just enough they needed to win the game. Kentucky is supposed to be a team that people going into the season has marked as somebody to maybe compete for the SEC East, at least be second place. I don't know about that, especially if you're only gaining 50 yards on the ground against Miami of Ohio. That's a red flag. They're going down to the swamp. Florida has Kentucky's number.
Well, here's the thing. They Will Levis, their quarterback, threw for 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was actually second to last in QBR in the SEC with 46. So not quite the worst, because we've already admitted that Spencer Rattler was the worst as far as QBR goes, but 65% completion percentage there in that game against Miami of Ohio.
So we just talked about the Iowa State-Iowa trend, how it's been Iowa since 2010.
Yeah.
This one has been all Florida. There was one year where Kentucky got that win a few years back, but this has been, up until that, was like 33 straight by Florida, and Florida's won, I think, the last 2.
Yeah.
This game's at the Swamp. There's just no way.
Anthony Richardson, he's a sophomore. He played really composed.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he did what he needed to do to win. He had a QBR of 94.8 in that game. So 70% completion percentage. I mean, they just did what they needed to do. And then, with Utah coming down the field, Cam Rising gets a little trigger happy and tries to push the issue there. And then they come up with an interception.
And you know what? Just talking about that game real quick, the interception in the end zone is one thing, but prior to that, in that drive, Cam Rising drops back, and they don't have any timeouts, and he throws a 1-yard pass to a guy tackled
Yeah.
inbounds, and I'm like, what are you? Just throw it away. You lost 20 seconds
Right.
by throwing a 1-yard pass. You
Yeah.
cannot do that. A
I
kid
think
of
he
his
was just
caliber
getting-
has to know better, though.
Yeah, could have
You
been
can't throw
first
a
game
1-yard
jitters. I mean, he is an experienced quarterback, but you know, that first game of just wanting to get out there. The Swamp is one of the most
Sure.
difficult places to play in the SEC. So,
Who do you have in this one?
I'm going to take Florida.
Yeah.
I think they got a huge confidence boost there. A lot of people were saying that Utah was going to win, and they just proved them wrong. And so I think they build from that. I don't yet want to say that they're contenders for the SEC yet.
Nah, I wouldn't put him there yet. No.
But I do think they can string a couple wins here together.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Arizona State, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is 11-point favorite at home. Oklahoma State's defense gave up 546 yards of total offense and 44 points to Central Michigan. Big red flag. I mean, you just can't do that. They were up at one point 51-15, and they let Central Michigan come all the way back.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the defense OSU had last year. It's completely different. They lost their 4 leading tacklers. They lost their defensive coordinator, and this is nowhere near the same defense, not even close.
Yeah.
That is a huge red flag for Arizona State. Their running back, Valladay, he had 15 carries, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, Spencer Sanders through the air, 406 yards, 4 touchdowns. I get that. Oklahoma State's offense is going to continue to put points on the board. Oklahoma State's offense is going to score at least 30 points in this game. I just don't think their defense can hold Arizona State under 30. So I think Arizona State actually comes out with the win in this one. So I'm going to take Arizona State.
I don't know that Arizona State, I mean, they're not. These two teams, I always kind of associate Arizona State and Oklahoma State. They're kind of in their respective conferences. Just every once in a while, they'll start to do better than people realize. And then they'll have a few down years, and then they'll have a year where they play really good.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Emory Jones at quarterback, who came from Florida.
Was originally an Ohio State commit. That's why I know him so
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And he's never impressed me, ever. I just don't see, I don't know. I know OSU's defense was atrocious. Playing against Central Michigan. But I don't know. I don't think that Arizona State is yet on their level. I think they will do some things defensively to turn some things around. Derek Mason has been a good defensive coordinator in the past. So I'm gonna take Oklahoma State.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move on to, we got 3 left. USC is a 9-point favorite against Stanford. Stanford's Tanner McKee was 22 of 27, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Caleb Williams was 19 of 22, 249 and 2 touchdowns. E.J. Smith for Stanford carried the ball 11 times, 118 yards. That's 10 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Stanford's secondary only gave up 59 yards passing in their game. And no, it was Colgate, but 59 yards passing, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think Stanford, ultimately, when you compare these two teams, Stanford wins on the offense and defensive side of the ball, on the defense and offensive line. Stanford has the bigger line. I think they have the better offensive line. Everybody is so focused on USC's skill positions that they have completely not paid any attention to the fact that USC's defense is not very good. And why would it be under Grinch?
Yeah.
Why would it be?
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything since Washington or Washington State.
Yeah.
And they're not good now. Stanford does have an offense that I think can really put some points up against USC. It's a home game for Stanford. Shocking upset here. I think Stanford outright wins the game.
I almost feel like I need to recuse myself from picking any USC games this year. I will try to do my best at being as objective
Fair
as
and
I
impartial.
can. Right. Because, when I look at a stat line, 19 of 22, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, QBR of 95.2 for Caleb Williams. Part of me wants that stat line to read 15 of 32.
Right.
But I can't fault the kid. He did what he felt was best for him. That's all in the past. I still can't stand Lincoln Riley, but that's a whole nother video. We've already done those videos. one thing I thought when Travis Dye transferred into USC from Oregon, I thought, man, that kid's a video game. I mean, he'll get anything he wants. He's got the speed to be able to compete in a Lincoln Riley offense. But then I start thinking about what did Lincoln Riley do with the running backs the last couple of years, and he really didn't do a whole lot with his speed guys. I mean, the little Darren Sproles type backs that he's had that should, in all senses, do really well in his offense. They hadn't. So it doesn't surprise me now to see he only got 5 touches, 20 yards. Caleb Williams was the leading rusher with 6 carries, 68 yards.
He's doing with Caleb Williams what he did with
Jalen
Hurts.
Yeah.
Yep. It was all the Jalen Hurts show, and that's exactly what he's doing right now with Caleb Williams.
Jordan Addison, comes in and has 5 touches for 54 yards, 2 touchdowns. So the touchdowns were there, but when you just have skill position player after skill position player after skill position player, that's when guys start to kind of say, I'm not really the star of this show like I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
And especially in LA. All that to say, Rice, they were able to move the ball down the field in the first half, but they still ended the game with 146 yards rushing, 134 through the air. So really not a whole lot. But what was entertaining was the USC fans on Twitter that were just dogging Grinch the entire game.
Yeah.
On the same stuff that we tried to tell them, previous to the season.
Right. And,
Does he make adjustments?
And I tried to say it when he came from Ohio State to OU. I
did.
said, have him.
Yeah.
He showed up in Columbus, and
Ohio
they realized
State,
really quick.
You see a trend from one school to another of previous schools trying to warn the next school. But you always want to go to bat for your coaches,
Sure.
the coaches that coach your favorite team. I mean, you're never going to, unless they've been there for a little while, and you can always point back to that other school. Well, it was Greg Schiano's defense, or whatever. But at OU, it was Grinch's defense,
right?
And the only thing
they were improved a little bit. Let's give them a little bit of credit. But,
it was the offense that actually got worse year after year after year. So do I think that they're going to come out like that, 66-14 against Stanford? No, I do not. But I do think that they win, and I think they cover.
Okay. I'll just say one thing. I've said this year after year after year after year, and it always becomes true year after year after year after year. If you want to win a national championship, you have to have a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
You can't. No team in the playoff era has won a national championship with a defense worse than 10th.
Yeah.
You can get in the playoffs with a defense up to around 30.
Yeah.
But if you expect to win, you got to have a defense.
Well,
and all this talk about USC being a playoff team, maybe they can get in the playoffs, but they're not going to win a damn thing if they don't have a defense. And Alex Grinch is not the defensive coordinator who's going to get you a national championship.
Right. And
not happening.
And if you remember, whenever Oklahoma lost Lincoln Riley, lost that coaching staff, or most of it, I had said I was really nervous about Coach Grinch going into the SEC and his style of defense and how I thought it wouldn't be a good fit. Mm-hmm. Now with USC in just a few short years going into the Big Ten, I don't think he's going to be – his system does not fit a smash mouth type power run. That's just not what he is.
USC in the Big Ten is going to be Purdue.
Yeah.
That's what Purdue is right now.
Yeah.
They throw the ball all over the place. They do have skill players, but they cannot play defense. They don't have the size up front on the offense or defensive line, and that's not going to change. So USC is going to be the next Purdue. They're going to be the Purdue of the Big Ten West. They are not going to compete for championships until they change that mindset, till they start recruiting big offense and defensive linemen.
I'm smiling because a tweet just came up, and I thought it was real because it was PFF, but they're just joking. They said breaking Clemson and Georgia Tech joining the Big Ten because it's been punt, 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 fumble, punt, interception.
It's Iowa. It's Iowa.
As we're talking about Big Ten football. But Grinch is going to have to stay with like a Washington State. Maybe, he should have taken his chance when they interviewed him and become their head coach. But
you got USC.
But anyway, I'm taking USC.
I'm going to take Stanford to pull the upset. So we got 2 left here. Okay, Baylor, BYU. BYU a 3.5-point favorite. Baylor beat Albany. BYU beat USF. USF, I would say, was the better team. Both teams gained 573 yards total offense in their respective games. Baylor on the FPI, a 57% chance of winning this, even though BYU is the favorite. I'd say BYU is probably the favorite because it's a home game for them. Tough to win at BYU. It really is.
Yeah.
BYU running back Christopher Brooks, he carried the ball 13 times for 135 yards and a touchdown. One thing here that I think is of a note, kickoff 9:15 Central Time, 10:15 Eastern Time.
Wow.
It is a 9:15 kickoff for Baylor, but for BYU students, this would be an 8:15. That is a little, to me, that time difference affects you. These players have to sit around all day long and wait for their game. Then they're playing at 9:15. Just the sitting around, I mean, you know how our bodies work. Like, you sit around anticipating something all day long, and you're just jacked up and ready to go. And then by the time you get there, it's 9:15 at night. Your body starts, it's like, hey, it's time to shut it down.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to play at a high level doing that.
Well, not only that, but the fans. I mean, I guess BYU, a lot of those fans aren't really drinking, so they don't really have a big party scene there. But yeah, going all day and then just having to wait and wait and wait. Yeah, that wouldn't be fun. I remember even high school football games. I could not wait till 7 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock rolled around because I'm just jacked all day. Just like, we get to play tonight. We get to play.
Yeah. Right. I think, in my opinion, with this, I think it's almost dead even. Yeah. I think it could be an even pick'em.
Yeah.
I really do, and I think because of that, because BYU is a 3.5 and not a 3, I got to take Baylor in the points. Yeah. Because I really think it's a tight game. It probably is one that Baylor squeaks out a 1-point win, or not Baylor, BYU, because of being home. But I do think Baylor is slightly the better football team. If they can overcome the time difference in the late kick, which, last year, Oklahoma State played Boise State, and it was one of these very late kicks. Yeah. And Oklahoma State struggled. Yeah. They really did. It was a very tight game when it probably shouldn't have been.
I mean, Aranda's a really good disciplined coach. He's going to have his players disciplined. One of the things I had on this game was BYU lunch pail team. Mm-hmm. Baylor now lunch pail team. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't have thought that of course not with the Art Briles style of what he made Baylor, but Dave Aranda comes in and is just a phenomenal defensively minded coach. I've got to take Baylor in this one too, because again they're the defending Big 12 champions. Yeah. This is actually a battle of future Big 12s. And maybe one of these teams can kind of slide into the Oklahoma, Texas spots that are being left from them joining the SEC, and see if both of those teams can kind of battle it out for.
I hadn't even thought about this being a future Big 12 game, so that brings another element to it. But so we both have Baylor covering the points at least.
And I would have said Oklahoma State, Arizona State, maybe future, because I know that the Arizona, but I think the Pac-12 and the Big 12 have kind of shut down negotiations. Okay.
The expanded playoff also kind of puts the brakes on the need to expand conferences right now. And I really think that's why that was fast-tracked, was to kind of put the brakes on this, to save the Pac-12, basically. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay, last game to pick, and then I got one other thing to add at the end. Oregon State, a 1-point favorite against Fresno State. Chance Nolan, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in his game. For Fresno State, Jake Hayner, 377 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oregon State beat Boise State 34-17. And Oregon State had 470 total yards of offense. Listen, I watched most of this game.
And he thinks Oregon State's going to win the national championship this year.
No. I do think Oregon State might be the second best team in the Pac-12. That is, I will go out on a limb and say that. I was extremely impressed with their offense and their defense watching them. And this is one of those games where the stats don't necessarily match the eye test. But the way that Oregon State was able to come out and just dominate Boise State, I didn't expect it. I mean, it was shocking. But there's something about Oregon State. I love the underdogs. I love the teams that year in, year out are supposed to be bad, and those couple years or so when they're really good. Remember when Kansas made that big run when they had the short little quarterback back in 07?
With Mangino as
Yes,
their coach?
yeah. And I rooted for Kansas that year because it's like I want to see these teams do good. I see a lot of potential in Oregon State. I really do. And in this game here, the only pause here is this game's at Fresno State. Fresno State can move the ball and they can score points. Oregon State, can they keep up? I think they can. I think the reason this spread is 1 is because it's essentially a pick 'em.
Yeah.
I like Oregon State in this game, so I'm going to take Oregon State.
Man, Fresno is usually one of those teams on the West Coast that is normally pretty good because they get a lot of the.
They're a team that should be in the Pac-12.
They get a lot of players that are kind of. I mean, I don't mean this as disrespectful, but it's kind of like an Akron, from Ohio. They get kind of the leftover kids that
the way Cincinnati used to get the Ohio State kids.
Right.
Kids that want to go to Ohio State don't get an offer, they go to Cincinnati.
And
that's what
as far as California, historically, the Fresno area is normally rich with talent, with football talent.
Yeah. It's like the Dallas or Houston area in Texas.
Have had a lot of kids. I think Joe Mixon was from that area. I mean, Oklahoma just used to get tons of kids. They had a pipeline to Fresno, and they would just get tons of kids from there. So with that, I'm not ready to quite crown Oregon State. They need to show me more because I've been bit by them in the past, being like, oh, maybe they're turning it around. And then the next week they just fall flat.
Can I say one other thing about the game when I watched it?
Sure.
First, I watched so much of that game and so long went along. And one thing that caught my attention is I'm watching that and I'm like, they got rid of that annoying chainsaw. Like, I didn't hear the chainsaw. And I'm like, yes, yeah. And then the next touchdown, I hear, I'm like, okay, I'm going to change the channel here in a minute because I can't put up with that. That is so annoying. I can't stand the chainsaw. Yeah. Like, it is so just obnoxious. But that said, I'm still rooting for it.
Yeah, well, so the games that I'm usually not too sure of, if it's a 1-point spread, I'm just going to go with the home team. I mean,
Makes sense.
Again, with Oregon State, I don't know. I'm not quite a believer until I see it with them.
Okay. So. All right. Well, that's our picks for week 2. One thing I want to point out because I didn't point it out at the beginning, so let's get this real quick. Week 1 picks. You were 5-5-2. I was 6-4-2. The difference really was the NC State ECU game because we picked the difference. That was really the big one. On games where we picked the same, which was almost all of them, 5-4-2 was our record. So for the year, I didn't add that up with the previous week. 6-3 and 5-4, 11-7 combined. So either way, we're still ahead. Yeah. After 3 weeks of
we're
2 weeks of picking,
kind of pulled even.
Yeah. So still ahead on picks for the first two weeks of picking games. So we'll see how we do with week 2. So
we're normally around 70%,
between 60 and 70% usually, which is really good because I find somebody else with better percentage than that. Yeah. Seriously. And, and again, I had a lot of people wishing me well for having COVID. A lot of people supportive of our channel with the comments last week. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you for watching. We did have a couple outliers who didn't like our picks or thought we were bad. But
nobody's going to love every pick. And listen, again, I can't say this enough. We just love talking sports. Yeah. I mean, we sit down. He's my brother-in-law. We always get together on Sunday for family lunch, and we just love talking, especially college football. So we just wanted to be able to do that in front of a camera. Hopefully you guys get something out of it. But we're just normal dudes who just love college football. And if you relate to that, awesome. Give us a follow. Give us a like. Talk to us in the comments. I used to do a lot more talking in the comments. I don't so much anymore. I've got 2 little girls that just kind of run my life now. Yeah. And so, but anyway, I was going to say we were just shy. I know last year we broke 8,000 subscribers, and then in the off season that usually kind of
we always lose about 200.
Yeah, some people start to clean up who they're following, what channels they're following, which is fine. But we have since gone over. We're at this isn't the real number, but we're at 8.29 thousand
Almost 8,300. Yep.
Yeah. So thank
Gained
you guys.
about 500 since we started this season.
Yeah.
So.
We'd been growing like 1,000 subscribers each season, but then the past couple seasons it's been like 2,000 every season.
Yeah, I think COVID had a lot to do with the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So
a lot when you guys subscribe more, we can start thinking about more things that we can do as far as giveaways. We've done giveaways in the past before.
Yeah.
I would love nothing more than to be able to return to you guys what you give to us in views. So. Just keep going with it. We got our first donation ever just a couple weeks ago, which was awesome. And we will never ask for your money at all. We just love doing this.
I think a couple years ago we gave away Madden when it first came out.
Yeah, Madden.
So, and we were definitely going to give something away when we hit 10,000 subscribers.
I would love to do like national championship tickets, or something, some kind of game.
Maybe when we get to 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
do that way. It's a little bit pricey.
Yeah. But we did hear. So Mike, I don't know how much you want me to share of your work life, but Mike.
Don't tell him where I work.
Mike works for a station here in Oklahoma, and he actually heard that some of the ESPN guys will watch our stuff from time to time.
Yeah, I've been told that through third hand
and not that they're like taking our content,
but that made sense because I had noticed we do a show on Monday. We post on Monday.
Yeah,
and some of the comments we make, almost word for word, end up on College Football Live.
Yeah.
Or on Game Day, and I'm like, that's exactly what we said. And then a person who works for ESPN had mentioned to other people that there are people at ESPN who do watch our show on Mondays.
Yes, so that's awesome.
So that's fine. We don't care. I mean, it's not like we're mad that they're taking.
No,
our stuff
I love
whatever,
it.
but,
I mean, I think I remember starting this with you 5 years ago, and we were in a completely different room. We had a green screen behind us, and we've kind of like tinkered, and that's when we were talking about just sports news, and then it kind of turned into this picking college football games.
If we ever do the Zoom again, we got to get a little better at that though. That was a little rough last week. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all I got. Again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Like the video. Please leave a comment. I do read all of them, even if I don't respond. So leave a comment. Check us out on social media. Sean's usually on Twitter sometimes. I pretty much stick to YouTube. But that's all we have. And you guys, good luck this week. And we will see you next week for week 3. Take care.